Hey, this is the story of Twitch Tales to date. We started off as Ep95, a hill dwarg, an equivalent of a dwarf in my world, ranger, horizon walker. We started off in a town called Shadridge, frontier town in the northwest of an island called Corintiel in the Kingdom of Sedential Islands in my world. Apis approached an apiary to find a man murdered, and the clues pointed to goblins as having been the culprits. Apis tracked the goblins down, murdered them, and returned the man's belongings to his estate. Upon doing so, Apis met a giant bee called Mel, and Mel became a lifelong companion and a almost companion animal to Apis. After meeting Mel, Apis took it upon themselves to track down more of these goblins, make sure they weren't a future issue as well. And upon murdering these other goblins, Apis discovered a town of 4 sister villages in the woods, all run by elves. Called the Four Sisters, and they had also been ransacked by these goblins recently. So Apis stuck around to help them rebuild, to the chagrin of some of the more racist among the elves. The Munglofau was a mining village of drow. The Helwurin was a hunting village of elves. The Dolbin Iluath was a village around cultivation of a magical flower called Prin flowers. And then Arachel was the only one of the 4 that Apis didn't get to see directly, because they are a very xenophobic race of elves that are diviners and soothsayers and future tellers, and they really don't like dwarves for some reason. Apis helped out these towns and eventually got them on their feet and headed back to Shadridge. Upon doing so, they discovered that there was a blight of some kind of necromancy happening throughout the town of Shadridge. Apis tracked this down to a lady called Sally, who was living in Shadridge as a weaver, but was secretly a necromancer student and was trying to raise an army of shadows. Apis and others managed to drive Sally from the village, but did not manage to kill her before she fled. But they did make friends with one of her potential victims, an elderly woman that was managed to be saved from the fate worse than death, an apothecarist called Edith. After saving the town of Shadridge, the Knights of Kavosna, the law enforcement of the town, told Apis that the messages and supplies from the nearby city of Fondurg had not been getting through, so would they mind investigating the path between the 2 towns. Upon doing so, they were encountered by bandits who turned out was working for a manticore to steal items from people on the path. And after dealing with the manticore and freeing their bandits, some of them came to live in Shadridge. Apis continued on down to Fondurg to deliver the message, and upon arriving in Fondurg realised that it was under the threat of a young green dragon, or young to adult green dragon, that was had moved into the area and had started amassing an army of half-dragon creatures. Apis investigated this dragon's lair and unfortunately in the process got captured by it, and was a trophy, a living trophy to Luciferique the dragon for some amount of time, getting to know some of the other trophies in the meantime, some other elves. Long story short, Apis managed to buy time through means of foraging in the surrounding areas, and also discovering a portal to the plane of air that had opened, returning, pissing off Luciferique, getting back on his good side, pissing off the Dragonborns that are in charge of you, getting back on their good side. There was some stalling tactics until the king's men got word of the dragon and sent some army to deal with it. Apis joined the fight with the army, turning on Luciferique in the last minute and slaying him with a perfectly shot arrow right through the back of his head as he fled. Apis managed to salvage some of the green dragon's scales and had them commissioned to be turned into magical braces of various different enchantments. which they subsequently never picked up, for reasons that we may get into in a moment. Apis helped the town of Fondurg to choose one of the fallen soldiers to be resurrected. They only had enough funds and resources to bring one person back from the dead, and the town voted on it and chose to bring back Vala, the head of the Arcanists Entente, a wizards guild in Fondurg. The wizard Vala was brought back, but in a slightly different body that she would have to get used to over time. Apis needed a break from Fondurg after this ordeal, and so headed back to Shadridge. Upon arriving back in Shadridge, Apis caught up with their friend Mosh, a gentleman who had arrived right before the Sally arc, and you had discovered through fighting Sally that he was secretly a werefox. Upon catching up with him now, though, he revealed that he had accidentally murdered someone because it was a full moon recently and he lost control of himself. You helped him to investigate the potential murder scene to know for sure what had actually happened, as his memories were a little fuzzy. And upon investigating the murder scene, you determined, no, actually, it doesn't look like the victim actually died. They may have been bleeding profusely, but they have struggled off into the woods, and you can't find any evidence of their corpse. So it seems maybe they survived, which actually terrifies Mosh even more, because it means that he has potentially given somebody the werefox curse. And when you investigated further, you discovered the victim was one of the elves that you were sharing a trophy room with when you were trophies to Lucifreak, an elven gentleman called Beladel. I almost said Benadryl, which is not his name, but the chat convinced me that it is. Beladel is his name. We tracked down Beladel to find that he was indeed recovering from his injuries, but was afflicted by the werefox curse and was trying to fight it off unsuccessfully. He did not want our help, as a somewhat xenophobic elf himself from the aforementioned town of Arachel. So we left him to it, and we decided instead that it was about time that we got a little extra help from a higher source. And so we tracked down, using our Horizon Walker portal magic abilities, we tracked down a portal to the Feywild plane, and we went through to the Feywild. Upon stepping out of the Feywild again, we realised we had lost all of our memory of the time on that plane of existence. And so time had skipped. We did not know where we were. We found ourselves in a strange land, feeling muddled in the brain, wearing different clothing, with certain scars and materials missing from our body. We eventually tracked down a new friend, an elven hermit called Seed. There was a cryptic note in our pocket saying to find Seed and to find the village, and Seed took us back to his abandoned village, of which he is the only proprietor. He told us about the Sentinels, a group of statue-like magical artifacts that look over certain boundaries between the planes, to put it very reductively. Slowly our memories came back to us, little by little, not of the Feywild, but of the reason we were there. Apparently we had been sent by an archfey known as the Merry Gentleman to help Seed, assist Seed with his fixing of certain ones of these sentinels. And so we did so. We fixed the Earth Sentinel using the plant that we were wearing as some sort of verdant armour. We could remove it from our person and plant it, and it would free the soil of its impurities, helping to fix the Earth Sentinel. After the Earth Sentinel was fixed, it allowed for passage to the plane of Earth. So we jumped through to the plane of Earth and met an Earth Genasi NPC called Spear, who was a bit of an ambassador for an Earth Genie. He came with us back to the material plane, and with his help and some of the rare Earth materials that we managed to get from the plane of Earth, we managed to fix the Fire Sentinel. After fixing the Fire Sentinel, we were able to fix the Air Sentinel, strike that, reverse it, After fixing the Air Sentinel, an underground relief of an elven woman that makes up the interior of a gigantic cave, we were then able to utilize some of that air magic, an air bubble, and use that to fix the Fire Sentinel, as fire needs air to survive. After all 4 of the elemental sentinels were fixed, the water one having been fixed prior to our campaign, our job here was done, and we were to move on. Through the process of fixing the Air Sentinel cave, we had met a colony of myconids, mushroom people, and they had a connected fungal network that was transplanar. We stepped into one of their mushrooms and came out of a mushroom on the other side, but not before undergoing a myconid-like mind melding situation where they could unlock some of our Feywild memories at the cost of us taking on some of their myconid mushroom qualities. So Apis became part myconid, part mushroom, and in doing so, unlocked all of their Feywild memories. So jumping back in time, the campaign went back to the moment you stepped into the Feywild, and we acted out all that had happened on that plane of existence. Mostly it was visiting the Merry Gentleman at his home, a mansion in the Feywild, where we met a bunch of the people who worked with him, including a centaur who trained us, and another archfey woman called the Wild Woman. She asked us a great number of questions, fully intrigued with who we are as a person, and especially as a mortal. We asked the Merry Gentleman a whole bunch of questions, some of which he answered, and some of those answers were useful. The main thing we learned from our excursion to the Feywild is a lot about Horizon Walkers and how they work, and how the planar travel works, how portal magic works, and utilising that information we can hopefully put an end to a portal that we'd started to hear about in the material plane, a portal to the demon planes. So we stepped through this myconid mushroom, arrived back in our regular homeland, surrounded by a bunch of evidence to the progression of time in a way that was not exactly a one-to-one correlation with the Feywild. While in the Feywild we had only been there for a matter of days, maybe a week or 2 at most, it seems that at least 7 or 8 months had passed on the material plane. And so the war with these hypothetical demons had turned into a very real war front with very really confirmed demons. So we head back to Fonderg to get the lowdown on what had happened, to learn that Fonderg was somewhat of a base of operations for a military strategy against the demon portal from the north. After putting together a team of 2 very capable allies, Charlie, a moon druid, and Joey, a Knight of Kavosna fighter, we headed north to Shadridge to see what was happening. On the way we got ambushed by demons, or fiends I should say, because one of them was clearly not actually a demon. We dispatched of the 2 that were demons and captured the one that was ambiguous, and upon interrogating her, found her to be strangely forthcoming in her answers. Either she was lying to us, or she just did not think of us as enough of a threat that telling us information was any concern to her. After death by captor, she essentially had you kill her, and ominously talked of seeing you again sometime, as she was to return to the demon planes to respawn, and in doing so will probably be passing on information about you and what you know to her demon lords. Continuing on from that, not worried, we headed to Shadridge, finally arriving back at our home for several months in the future, and discovering all that had changed. Namely, Edith, the apothecarist we had met before, had been arrested by the occupying Knights of the occupying Royal Cross Royal Army for being an obstreperous, cantankerous old woman, and thrown in a pit, essentially. We also discovered that the the mayor's house had been converted to a military base of operations, and we talked to some of our friends and allies and caught up with them. Finally, we went to the Lucky Loot, an inn here in Shadridge, a tavern, where we met with Gretchen, the half-orc owner, and she introduced us to a half-bionic, dragonborn, demon slayer warrior known as Copernicus. And as Copernicus turned to us to greet us, that's where we ended off, episode 94.
So this was a recap of the Apis story so far. When you've caught up, you can join us live over on twitch.tv/Robert Hartley GM.